Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 109th episode of Tuesday Funk, Chicago's favorite eclectic monthly reading series where good writing and good beer mix. My name is Andrew Huff, and this is my co-host, Eden Robbins.
Thanks, Andrew. You can usually find us in the upstairs bar at Hopleaf the first Tuesday of every month, but thanks to the pandemic, we are obviously not there. So instead, we're trying something a little different and doing this YouTube live video stream. The readers tonight are all pre-recorded, but you'll be able to chat and comment with us during the show or in between readings.
So, grab the beverage of your choice, sit back, and enjoy. You can also find updates from us online at tuesdayfunk.org, as well as on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram at tuesdayfunk. Okay, we have a great show for you tonight, so we're just going to get started. Our first reader this evening is a poor brown bee from Humboldt Park, Chicago. She has almost died 6 times in her life and knows that she is still alive to serve people and communities that could benefit from hearing her stories and brain droppings. She hosts and produces a monthly storytelling show, The Stoop. Her only goal here tonight and any night is hopefully to get one of you to want to share your truest and most authentic self with everyone you meet one day. Check her out at lilybee.com to learn more about all the things she does, and please welcome Lily B.
I don't know what to share from my home. I've been pondering this for you all, Tuesday Funk, because I normally go to your show to make some white folks uncomfortable as they need to be in the second floor of the Hot Leaf sometimes. I want them to go home thinking about some shit, but I've realized that the world has got that covered for me right now. And maybe not. I don't know. So do I take it light today? I figured I might. You know? Why not? And then give it to y'all nice and real and rough next time I see y'all. So, y'all got lucky. But anyway, here we go. I shared a story Tuesday Funk one time about the time that I caught my mom and dad, or I found out why my mom and dad got divorced. And it's a pretty serious story. Y'all should check it out. It's real. Lately, though, I have really been thinking about that story because in my own life, my son has confronted me about some things that I did not tell him. And the thing that comes into my mind right now, because it's not a lot, trust me, it's not a lot. He knows most of my shit. But this one was just one that I just, for some reason or other, I didn't tell him. So during the pandemic, I went and adopted a bearded dragon. And he bought one. And he, went and got everything for me because he's an amazing son. And I remember that in all that, I believe I told his girlfriend a story about a time that when he owned the bearded dragon and one thing leads to another, and he calls me, and he's like, why didn't you tell me about this thing that happened? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah, my girlfriend just told me about a story that you told her about Shenron, his dragon. And I didn't know about this. And I was like, really? I didn't tell you about this? And the time that he's referring to is a time where his dragon had gotten was already had some digestion issues and had gotten a impaction. And mind you, I'm in my mid-20s, so I'm young. I don't know what I don't know what a herpetologist. I don't got that kind of money to fix no damn lizard stomach. So I go on the internet to figure out how to fix a lizard stomach, in an impaction specifically. And I find a couple homeopathic remedies that I try out, I give him a little Sybaris spa bath where he could just sit in the little spa, and and hopefully the water in the bubbles kind of make him poop it out, but that doesn't work. And I find myself at 3 o'clock in the morning doing the one that I really didn't want to do, which is like forcing him to take some olive oil drops and then rubbing with a little force and motion, like almost like a little vibrator, um, his butthole, his stomach and his butthole, to make sure that he pooped. And sure enough, he poops. His dad held him, and then I was like, poop, and all the poop came out. And then I just put him back in the tank, and nothing happened. But I told his girlfriend this story, assuming that I had already shared it with him, because he's heard so many of my other more serious, darker, crazier stories. And he calls me and he's like, Mom, why didn't you tell me about this? And I was like, what? And he's like, and he thought it was funny. He was laughing. And I really sat and thought about, like, why I did not tell him that story. Because it wasn't even as serious as, like, my mom not telling me the story of, why her and my dad broke up. Which, again, go listen to it. Tuesday Funk YouTube channel. But it was just, I don't know. So we laugh about it, and then I really sit with that. Like, why wouldn't I tell him that story? And as I sit with it, I realize, because I didn't want to explain to him why we did that or had to do that. I guess I didn't want to have to explain to him that he had almost killed his bearded dragon by putting in the wrong substrate and not peeling the apples right, or something like that. So death, I didn't want him to experience, like, talk to him about death, but I also didn't want to explain to him that I was poor, or that we were poor. Because that's the real reason that we had to do that, is because we couldn't afford to take his damn lizard to a vet. Should it need a surgery? I ain't paying for no lizard stomach surgery. You crazy? I mean, now I might, but back then, mid-20s, teen mom, no. He wasn't going to be able to fix it or change it. And now that I think about it, that's probably why my mom didn't tell me about my dad, right? Because they just figure, they're not going to be able to fix it or change it. And then it makes me wonder, oh man, white people, I'm sorry, I know I made a promise, but now I got to go back on it. I wonder if that's why y'all don't talk about what y'all need to talk about. Because deep down, that conversation's been had about how they don't believe y'all will be able to fix it or change it. You know. I will say, though, that in both the story with my son and my mom, it doesn't hurt to know, just in case it's something that we run into that we could fix and maybe change. Because right now I have a bearded dragon. And if he were to get one, he'd know how to fix and change it, right? And if I ended up meeting a guy like my dad, I might be able to fix and change my situation before it got as far as it did with her and my dad. So yeah, we might not be able to fix and change the situation as it is when it was happening then. But it doesn't hurt to know just in case. Just in case. You can fix and change it when the time comes later down the road. I think y'all should go pick up some phones, ask some questions, and go take care of some business. I don't know.
Our second reader is the product of 9 years in San Francisco and 8 years in St. Paul, and is pleasantly surprised to have lived in Chicago for over a decade. During that time, she has published essays and speculative fiction, performed stories around the city, and consumed many carne asada burritos. You can find her on the internet at Rosamund, and most recently on tour.com with an essay about body positivity in fantasy literature. Please welcome Rosamund Lannon.
Our design director is telling me he was an urban youth. He is maybe 50 and white and queer, and he is correct. He did grow up within Chicago city limits. I also grew up within city limits. I am 30 and white and female, and I am uncomfortable with our conversation. I'm trying to find a way to tell him that he shouldn't call himself an urban youth. I can't find the words, despite the fact that he is literally paying me to find the right words. And so finally, I just say it. Urban youth has connotations. When you say urban youth, people think like disadvantaged kids. He pauses. Oh, I will not call myself an urban youth. What about city kid? I suggest. What I am not saying, and what he is not saying, is that urban youth usually means poor black kids, and we are neither. And maybe that's why people look so confused when they find out that I grew up in a city. They look at me like I'm a unicorn, or more accurately, a narwhal. Something they've heard about, something they know is real, but it just seems so improbable. A whale with a tusk? A child like you, raised in an urban area? For many people, the idea of childhood is inextricably intertwined with the suburbs, and I know this because I am a human who participates in social interactions. Where did you grow up is a small talk staple. At some point in your life, someone will ask you, did you grow up around here? And I tell them, no. I was born in San Francisco, I lived there till I was 9, and then I moved to St. Paul, Minnesota. I came to Chicago for college, and I've lived here ever since. And at that point, they ask, oh, you grew up in San Francisco, like the city? I say yes. And then there's a long pause, and then they say, huh. I watch them scramble to conceive of a youth without lawns, giant houses, and streets with no sidewalks. The asker, so sure we were on common cultural ground, but now lost at sea, wrestles with the idea of how a child can blossom without geographical isolation, how it is possible to grow and even thrive in close quarters with a diverse array of humans, lots of buildings, and cultural institutions a short bus or train ride away. There is the sound of gears turning, wood burning, as they try to determine if I am very rich or very poor. I am neither. I grew up middle class in San Francisco, and San Francisco in the 90s was a wonderful place for a middle class child. I was born at home in a tiny rental house in Noe Valley. We moved farther and farther out from that house every year, and from an early age, I knew that these migrations were unwanted and economic in nature, which is to say that my mom would often yell at my dad that if we keep moving, we're going to end up in Daly City. My mom wanted to stay in San Francisco, and understandably so. There was so much to love. Last year at a party, a guy asked me what kids who grew up in cities do anyway. And I told him that I probably did a lot of the same things he did. I read Goosebumps and went to school and watched cartoons and played with my friends. I had my friendship triangle, tall Laurel and loud Maria, who hated each other but liked me. I walked to my small Catholic school every morning. I like to confront people with these commonalities because I hate the idea that you cannot be a child without acres of land. I want to make my experience real to them. And this idea that I throw at them, this idea of common experience, is a half-truth. It's a yes and. I did some of the same things you did, but I also took field trips to the Academy of Sciences and the De Young. And on weekends, my mom and I took the bus to the giant Sanrio store downtown, which is now closed, but it was 3 glorious levels of Hello Kitty and Spotty Dotty, and my favorite, the angry penguin Bats Maru. From there, we would walk to Chinatown or Clement Street, where we ate barbecue pork buns and chicken chow fun and giant steaming bowls of wonton soup. Back in our apartment, I creeped on our neighbors in the style of my heroes, girl detectives and city kids, Anastasia Krupnik and Harriet the Spy. Sometimes we would drive to Berkeley or Oakland or Half Moon Bay, or to the redwood forests or the beach, and drink Calistoga by the side of the road to help with car sickness, belching and watching the waves until it was time to go. My days were rich with people and color, broken up by hills that made your thighs sing, but when you got to the top, you could see everything laid out like a picture, a stunning stretch of buildings capped by a cool and foggy crown. We never made it to Daly City. We stayed in San Francisco until 1994, then moved to St. Paul, Minnesota, across the country, aka basically across the world. I left for Chicago as soon as I got a college acceptance letter, and I've been here ever since. I'm here right now. Living in a city is one of the few areas of my life where I am not plagued with self-doubt. I have always been sure about it. I know it deep in my bones. I imagine that this is what it's like to have religion. And even as the possibility of motherhood draws closer and closer into my orbit, my ears remain deaf to the siren song of the suburbs. I'd like to raise children here. The nebulous notion that it's better 20 or 30 or 40 miles out fails to inspire. Maybe because I know what I have here, and it feels so right. Disasters show us who we are and where our heart calls home. As the pandemic became real and then very real, I realized that I'd been taking my city for granted. And I think it's normal to do this when you love someone, especially when you've loved them for a very long time. But that doesn't excuse it. It's also not strange to love cities for what they are to you, without fully considering everyone else who lives in them, even though those loved ones and casual friends and strangers, those people, they're what makes your heart soar and settle every time you leave the house. The pandemic raged on. I watched who left and who stayed. A pandemic, as it turns out, is a great way to find out which of your friends are secretly rich. And I am not saying that absconding to an upstate country home or a parent's West Coast estate means you don't care about where you claim residency, but I am saying that some cliches are true. In this case, that big, life-changing events show you what it really means to live in a place. They show you what it means to truly love a place. I have lived here for 17 years. San Francisco gave me life, Minnesota showed me struggle, and Chicago made me grow up. I mean that in the grown-up sense, like it helped me become an adult, but there are a lot of children that live here too. And when people cannot believe that I grew up in a city, what I hear is that they do not believe that cities are real places. Because if they could see Chicago as a real place, they might feel odd that a shameful portion of its 570,000 children don't get what they need every day. It might start to feel wrong that a not insignificant portion of these children don't get good schools or meals or a decent place to sleep. But if a city is not quite real, if it remains a vague and violent over there, it becomes easy to dismiss the children who call it home. This pandemic is a motherfucker. It's a murderer that the government let break down the door without even getting up from the couch. And during dangerous times like this, when a murderer stalks a city, Truly loving a city becomes not only a matter of honesty, it's a matter of survival. It means loving the humans where you live, your community, as much as any award-winning restaurant or beautiful building or charming street name. It means recognizing that you and your city are in a marriage, a union, where you pledge to love it for better or worse, in sickness and in health, for as long as you both shall live. If you do want to say I do to the city of Chicago, get involved in local politics and activism and mutual aid. Yes, you will spend 45 minutes hearing a dreadlocked white man debate the meaning of the word abolition, but you will also probably find some ways that you can help. See the people around you as part of what you love about this place. Or maybe just start with this. See cities as a real place where children grow up. I loved where I grew up, a lot, and I was protected by my skin color and middle-class money. A lot of children are not protected this way, and they deserve to love it too. They deserve to live here also. Disabuse yourself of the idea that the city is a place you go in your 20s, treat like an amusement park, and then abandon when you start to take life seriously. If, when this is all over, you want to move to the suburbs, or a small town, or maybe another city, that is fine. But wherever you live, take with you the idea that cities are not just a playground. Children play here too.
Our next reader is the author of the novel Jenny in Corona, which came out last year from Tortoise Books. About the novel, Rebecca Mackay said, "Jenny in Corona is by turns hilarious and devastating and profound. Stuart Ross has one of the strangest minds I've ever encountered. I say this not as a warning, but as an enthusiastic endorsement. His work has appeared in Gaber's Block, Volume 1 Brooklyn, Diagram, Pioneer Town, and many other publications. He lives in Andersonville with his wife Betsy, their son Leonard, and Jax the cat. Please give a warm welcome to Stuart M. Ross."
All right. Thank you, Tuesday Funk. Thank you, Andrew and Eden, for still making this July reading happen, and all the readers tonight. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Happy summer. Merry Christmas. I know we'd all rather be together at the Hop Leaf right now, drinking weird, expensive beer, but we're here, wherever we are. Life is still elsewhere, as a poet once said. So I have this poem here tonight to read. I hope you guys enjoy it. This poem here is called The Smile of the Good Jewish Man. The Smile of the Good Jewish Man. Just like Molly Lindsay and Emily Karenina and Saul Bellow stand in Tolstoy of the Jujus. Just like Sally Draper in Conversations with Student Loans and Natasha +1 in similar French Girlfriend set against the downtown art scene on the cusp of the 1980s. Similar to an italicized Nana, sometimes simply referred to as the Nana, I mean, let's face it, these are mitochondrial bubbies dragging two-way radios through the italicized streets of the snow-drenched steeples of Paris. I like the short chapters. I like the short sentences. When the daughter remarries. When the aunt divorces. Just like when Adam Sackler nutted on the pecs of the luncheon brunette and viewers heard the difference between coming in the heart of the homo and the heart of the het as a question of breastplates. Similar to Adam Gordon's white male writer tears anent Rihanna on the Louisiana subway. Similar to Nathaniel P.'s delight in observing West Indians at picnic. Similar to Phil Friedman's refusing to triplicate a recommendation for the slush pile readers at Consecutive Bricks Press. Similar to the many good people of Queens unscrupulously observed by the many decent writers from Brown University, where showboating traumatic ethnicities with commas is offered as a gap year elective. Similar to the Stillerism unto death in Jeff Goldblum's version of Woody's deepest buried filmic self executive producer of Baumbach's riddling autoriority. So this is that Twitter novel written by the prof who never really got into Twitter. It's that long-listed, remaindered second-person narrative from last fall's Most Anticipated about how you, elusive eunuch, crack the critics' LaCroix, and how you, slippery eunuch, take your revenge on the critic by lining their simple human trash cans with the letter N, when you, eunuch who quotes Barthes and never James, knows very well that the liner J snugs your critic's trash, your critic's crash. Bacon is the health of the state. The mother has a secret. The wife finally lets go. You should avoid the homogenization of native peoples. You should avoid the monetization of black pain. The brothers turn out to be gatekeepers who never let us in. That's why we build that wall. Similar to placing the cranberry tampon on Harvey Weingart's lips, hidden in Upper Egypt, paused in Byzantium, referenced in Italia, and checked out of a Squirrel Hill library once the printing press changes the world. When a literary power couple divorces, who gets custody of the line breaks? You thought we were going to sit here and go naked on the floor, didn't you? You thought we were going to go live here in just a minute, didn't you? You thought we were going to sit cross-legged on the hardwood and say cool shit about Kendrick. Similar to the colonists learning something forgettable about the African and the African learning something forgettable about Portugal. We contribute our stories in order to avoid health insurance. Oh my God, those concrete descriptions of the bad good coffee at the Colombian, Ecuadorian, Belizean bakeries in my new family-oriented, but not in my stepfather's ex-urban kind of way, neighborhood off a seriously depressing stop on the JMZ line. I mean, let's burn in our souls as we dip Stelladoras into these reinterpreted nightmares. I mean, this is our bitter yet truth-forming storefront bakery coffee ulcerously coruscating through the autofiction describing the haircuts of children whom I believe to have an open culture. None of those deep, dark secrets of my abandoned whiteys back in Buffalo Grove. Similar to Whitney Soloway learning the fizzling truth about pop from a business class turtleneck. Just like Pansy Braithwaite in The Advance of Regret, when the daughter remarries, when the aunt divorces. And I'm not sure anyone knows this, but clippings suggest a laconic revival of garage rock in the late summer of 2001 when we meet a pale-voiced apparition wearing a lightly perfumed shawl, and Shorty has been asleep for 60 minutes. My God, we park here forever. This is that dull vagina pain of our lollygagging youth. Let's sit on Jacob and Naomi so they can't get away as they wander an infrequently observed New York City, making interior observations via exterior observations, never registering paper because that would be bloggy at best, gauche no matter what, yet these jokes are all we have. And while some of them land and more of them don't, I mean, I can just luxuriously bathe here with my peoples, you know, because I'm not ashamed that this is what I love when the mother remarries, when the aunt divorces, and when the husband leaves the room mid-synopsis. Charlie, I miss you. And I remember that because we couldn't get jobs at the hedge fund university in Boston, we were scarfing down Butterburgers 70 miles east of Denver when you leaned in and told me, and the rest of the Culvers, that William Blake changed your life. I never cared for visionaries or your snobby opinions, but I kept that to myself because, Charlie, I loved you. Black card between the acts reads, Pittsburgh is the new inaudible. Nobody ever got fired for starting a sentence. I might get fired for this. Some of us pocket our livings fighting Afghanistan's against the written word. You call it an endless war. We call it media. The brothers turned out to be the tour de force of the summer. Similar to overdosing on sunlight at a hypocrisy rodeo. Similar to Martin Amis sedulously throwing an adverb party and refusing to invite Gordon Lish. This game changer for how we think about the novel itself. Similar to chocolate-dipped Hathaway almonds on a bat mitzvah morning. What's the German word for not remembering the Japanese word for too many books? Similar penned in ballpoint Comic Sans novel with long gun Holocaust parallel structure, exploring Obama's rhetorically inspired trip to an Amazon packing facility, dragging a two-way radio through the hippest East Berlin streets before dawn, never again. Say it in your fitter, happier voice to get past the phone interview. Hermeneutics of suspicion, no priors. The brothers turn out to be white boys with the free time to shoot it out until they discover they have limited crossover appeal, especially to their left. Quite unlike any other hate-skimming experience in post-blame mastheads, The Smile of the Good Jewish Man, penned by our Pan-African MacArthur Fellow Obadiah J.N. Flanagan. Some of it at Yaddo, most of it without a 403B at The Ohio State University, with black male writer tears scribbled on flights back from Windhoek. Breathtaking yet life-affirming and already in treatment for an original series and winner of several major awards, not even 14 months before its cover reveal. It'll turn you turf if you weren't already an isotope of masculinity. Similar to the heartbreak of Barry Bonds. Just like April Wheeler and Richard Yates. The Smile of the Good Jewish Man. Jive James Baldwin in the John Muir Mountains. Arousal peaked. Adds to cart.
Okay, we're going to take a brief couple of minute intermission so that you can refill your drink and visit the bathroom. But before you do, I want to draw your attention to a way to thank the readers. This is obviously a free show, and while Chicago's live lit scene is an excellent way for writers to gain an audience and see how their work comes across, it's not really making any of these folks money. So if you're up for it, please Venmo a donation to me at ME3DIA, that's at Me3dia, and we will divvy up the funds to give to all of the readers. Eden and I are not going to take any of it. It's all going to them. By the way, Hopleaf is now open for patio and limited indoor seating, as well as takeout. Unfortunately, we can't do Tuesday Funk there yet, but if you can support them in some way, please do. See the comments for links. No pressure, again, but we will appreciate it if you do give a little bit to our readers tonight. Thanks in advance.
Thanks to Hopleaf and to our bartender Leah, whom we hope to see very soon. And thank you, lovely audience members, for joining us today. We don't know when Tuesday Funk will be back at Hopleaf yet, but we will keep you posted. Our August 4th show will probably also be virtual. Visit tuesdayfunk.org to learn more and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, etc. for updates. Our next guest is a writer, diversity consultant, and occasional feminist who talks a lot about intersectionality, policing, gender, sexual assault, and other current events. Her nonfiction can be found at Time.com, The Guardian, Washington Post, Ebony, Essence, Salon, Exo, Jane, Bustle, Islamic Monthly, and a host of other sites. Her media appearances include BBC, NPR, The Daily Show, PBS, MSNBC, Al Jazeera, WVON, WBEZ, TWIB, and Showtime. She has discussed race, feminism, violence in Chicago, tech, pop culture, and various forms of media, as well as at universities across the country. She is the author of Amazon's Abolitionists and Activists, illustrated by A. D'Amico, and of Hood Feminism, both from Penguin Random House. Please give a warm welcome to Mickey Kendall.
Hi, my name is Mickey Kendall. I'm going to be reading from my book Hood Feminism, an essay, The Hood Doesn't Hate Smart People. I have what my mother calls euphemistically a rebellious spirit. It's a nice way to describe a child who is not what you expected. This does not mean that I was always strong, always sure, or anything even remotely close to the narratives of inborn self-confidence often foisted on young Black bodies to excuse the premature expectations of adulthood. I was a cowardly child who A, hated fighting, literally cried through a fight because I hated fighting, and B, threw my whole self into the fight anyway. I wasn't a good fighter. I was just a child who understood that not wanting to fight is meaningless sometimes. There is a lot of research around young women of color and fighting, a narrative that lends itself to the idea that they are violent for the sake of violence. It ignores the fact that they are often the only people with an investment in their own safety outside their nearest and dearest. I wasn't a cool kid. I was a nerd. My nickname was Bugs. And yes, I got teased for talking so proper and reading so much, but it wasn't the Black people don't value education trope that gets trotted out so often. There were lots of smart kids at my grammar school, Charles S. Kosminski. We were all poor, so there was relatively little difference in our clothes in terms of price. Style was the key, and I had none. None. I was 2 years younger than everybody else in my grade, and my grandmother's sense of style was age appropriate, but not grade appropriate. She brought me the kind of clothes you dress little girls in that are prissy images of girlhood. Lace tights, Mary Janes, and full skirts, while everyone else was in overalls and gym shoes. I stuck out, and not in a good way. It didn't help that I sounded like I was reading from a dictionary half the time. Fortunately, I had friends who understood the social perils of being raised by a grandparent. They nudged me to hang out, to talk like the other kids did when the adults weren't listening. I learned the code switch sometime between 7th grade and 12th grade, but I was always a nerd. There's a trend in some of these feminist books to tell you that the hood punishes you for being smart, that it hates those who reach for success. That wasn't my experience at all. The same kids who called me books are now adults who pass my articles around and tell me how proud of me they are, because there was nothing malicious in the teasing. I teased, I was teased. That's basically the nature of kids. There's a myth of exceptionalism attached to people who succeed academically after a childhood in poverty. We must be unique and thus worth listening to, but at the price of leaving behind the past and the people in it. You're supposed to look back on those years as though they were this hard-scrabble time and you would never expose your child to the same things, if you even have a child. Because after all, growing up there is scarring, the kind of thing that might mean you have to sacrifice everything else to claw your way out. It's a comforting idea to some that aspiring to a place at the table comes at a cost. That success for marginalized people means leaving behind their culture and community because it isn't good enough to get them where they want to go. But that's a myth that opens the door for some women to be shut out of conversations that directly affect them. Being one of those people lends itself to unique and useful ability to understand not only how something can be helpful, but also how it can be twisted to hurt the people it is meant to serve. Class and classism matter here. This isn't something that springs up out of nowhere. We treat being poor, being from the inner city, being from the country as a reasons to be ashamed, even though no one controls the circumstances of their birth. We look at places that are being starved of resources, where being tough is a matter of survival. And then we say, in order to have safety, financial stability, housing that isn't subpar, you have to be willing to cut away everything that made you. And when some people can't or won't do that, we punish them for it. It's assimilation, not acculturation. that is demanded of people who are already sacrificing, already making hard choices. Yet whenever a problem arises, those same skills are what everyone needs to make it. Ask your elders about bread lines and soup kitchens. Ask them who steps in immediately after a disaster, natural or otherwise. Invariably, it is those with the least who are the most generous. It is women who are worried about their own homes and families, who comfort themselves by cooking pots of soup to feed rescuers. It is men who have nothing to lose who climb into the wreckage without masks or gloves to pull out those who had everything and lost it. The things are replaceable, the people are not, is the logic. Unfortunately, that kind of compassion isn't as common in reverse. I'm a descendant of enslaved people. My great-great-great-grandmother, Mary Gamble, was sold on Sullivan's Island, and that is as much as I will ever know about her origins. It was theorized that she wasn't completely African based on her reported complexion, but there's no way to know. We know more about her children. My great-great-grandfather, A.B., or Abraham, was gifted to one of his white half-siblings when the family decided to move from South Carolina to Arkansas. His children were born into slavery, though they were freed after the Civil War. My great-grandfather's land is still technically in the family, though my grandfather never lived on it after childhood. He had a temper, you see, and so he went north because otherwise he was going to get himself or someone else killed. That was the fear anyway, and he was a hard man, so perhaps this was a valid concern. By the time I met him, he was on the usher board at Blackwell AME Zion. But people told stories about a man who tried to rob him, and the way he dumped that man in the ambulance Bay County. He met my grandmother in Chicago. She was the granddaughter of enslaved people. We don't know as much about her family history. A lot of it was secret, though I do know that her mother, Penny Rose, was the first woman in my maternal line to legally be able to read. I've gotten far enough back in the research to know that her mother was enslaved for a time in Georgia, and her father was enslaved in Louisiana, but I have no idea how they met or a host of other details. There was a lynching, you see, some murder. My family believes in revenge in ways that I can't quite explain. And then they moved. They left the South, came to Chicago, Detroit, spread west to California. Penny Rose ran a policy wheel, and I was raised by Dorothy, who was also involved in policy. Vice and sacrifice paved the way. Survival can be a religion unto itself, and for many, it's the only one that they always have time to practice. Putting food on the table, giving the next generation a better shot at success by way of relocation or education. The hood doesn't lack answers, it lacks resources. And so the priorities behind basic survival are how to accumulate enough to set up the next generation for more success. I have a bachelor's from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and a master's from DePaul in Chicago. My great aunts were educated, though my grandmother left college during the war. And there's a weird story about her working for the U.S. Army Signal Corps that might, in fact, be a cover for her working in cryptanalysis. Dorothy loved her puzzles and her mysteries and her codes. And she was frankly a genius who never got the credit she probably deserved. But she raised strong, smart children, complicated children, but still, she made sure that we knew what price was paid to get us here. I tried to drop out of high school once, and by tried, I mean I mentioned taking the GED because I was a 16-year-old senior having a miserable time in high school. I was bored and restless, and I told my grandmother my grand plan. She had just had a radical mastectomy, and I was hanging out with her because, well, elders really matter in my community. You listen to them, you spend time with them. And I talked to my grandmother every day about everything. We had a great relationship that was only in peril for the approximately 30 seconds when I thought dropping out to get my GED was a good idea. Pro tip, never tell a woman who lived through Jim Crow, who grew up with grandparents who had been enslaved, who had a mother who worked tirelessly to make things better for her kids, that you want to throw away your chance at a diploma. I mean, you could, but I promise you, you are not built for the moment you get snatched up by a hand that is harder than steel, while she informs you about what your ancestors paid in blood to buy your access to education. Want to know more? Gotta buy the book. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Our final guest this evening is a New York Times best-selling author. With Guillermo del Toro, he co-authored The Shape of Water, based on the same idea the two created for the Oscar-winning film. Also with Del Toro, he co-authored Troll Hunters, which was adapted into the Emmy-winning Netflix series. The Death and Life of Zebulon Finch was named one of Entertainment Weekly's top 10 books of the year, and he has won 2 Odyssey Awards for Rotters and Scowler, and has been a Library Guild Selection YALSA Best Fiction for Young Adults, Bram Stoker finalist, and more. Coming soon is The Living Dead, a posthumous collaboration with filmmaker George A. Romero and his first middle grade novel, They Threw Us Away. He lives with his wife here in Chicago. Please welcome Daniel Kraus.
Hi, I'm Daniel Kraus, and I'm the co-author of The Living Dead with George A. Romero. He, of course, was the director of Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and a lot of other movies, and was pretty much my hero growing up and into adulthood. And he died before being able to finish this big novel, which was his final word on zombies. And I was asked by his widow to finish the book, which was a great honor. So I'm going to read you a section of this book. This is a chapter from the middle. One of the unique things about the novel, as opposed to Romero's movies, is it actually goes into the heads of zombies for the first time. So I'm going to read you a chapter that's from the point of view of a zombie, but really it's sort of all zombies. As you'll see, they sort of all kind of connect. And they're on a aircraft carrier that has been sort of swarmed by zombies. And so there's references to sort of the flight deck and the underneath decks. I did a lot of research on aircraft carriers, and for example, here's one of my visual aids, and I visited an aircraft carrier and did all that kind of stuff. So one of the zombies who's sort of speaking here, his name was Scud. So if you hear the name Scud, that was his name when he was alive. All right, so this chapter is called You Are Not Alone. You did not expect the world to look like this. Fire is everywhere. You do not like it. Fire hampers your hunt for that which might assuage the hunger. Though it has become clearer, the hunger cannot be assuaged. You have bitten many fast-moving ones. Most of their meat has fallen out of your mouth. Some has fallen into your stomach, where it floats in blood. Hunger, you understand, has nothing to do with eating. You sense this from the start. Hunger is about hunting. Even that word is insufficient. It is about communication. There has been much communication. The first fast-moving ones you found ultimately ran, leaving behind those who were no longer fast-moving. You waited, curious and hopeful. One by one, they woke up. They were you. You did not feel happy, only satisfied. You have a gray memory of feeling the same flat satisfaction upon completing tasks when you too were a fast-moving one. The difference now is you also feel the satisfaction of the other yous as you spread out across the ship. It is like having long fingers. You cannot feel every detail, but enough to know you are united. You communicate more efficiently than the fast-moving ones. Perhaps more efficiently than fast-moving ones have ever communicated. You have learned a lot about yourself in a short while. You learned you can feel things that are very cold or very hot, but have trouble distinguishing between the two. You learned this when you grasped the muzzle of a fired gun and the flesh of your palm began to smoke. Your inferior hearing is less of a deficit than it was at the beginning. Fast-moving ones, you have found, are loud. They shout and scream. They slam doors. They fire guns. They do not seem to realize how easy this makes it to find them. Your inferior eyesight has also been of small consequence. When threatened, the fast-moving turn on lights, lots of them. Their guns even flash when fired, making the most dangerous ones the easiest to pursue. Most wear light-colored clothing. Some have symbols on their chests, so shiny you can see them in the dark. You understand that you were born without language, only when certain words begin to return. To recall words, first you must hear them. It is a slow process, helped by repetition. Certain words and phrases are shouted into your face more than others. die, fucker, asshole, piece of shit, pile of walking shit. From these words, you begin to build an understanding of yourself and how you are regarded. You, fucker, asshole, piece of shit, pile of walking shit, watch fast-moving ones climb ladders until your body remembered what to do. You ascended from darker chambers to a place where air is crisper and light saturates. Up here, fast-moving ones are abundant, but you do not like to chase them. It is because of the fire. Fire comes from fast-moving ones. It is their furious words turned into heat, light, sound, smell, taste. You have not moved since beholding the fire. You do not think you will go any farther. You are afraid. It is a new feeling for you. Over time, things change. You, and then the book sort of has the spread with the word you repeated over and over. You are not alone. You are larger. You are stronger. You pass the knowledge of how to climb ladders to other yous, and you did not let you down. You will never let you down. Fucker, asshole, pieces of shit, pile of walking shit. None of these fire words matter. The fire cannot get all of you. New yous will replace the yous that fall. Smoke cannot hide fast-moving ones. They move too fast to hide. They have always moved too fast to survive. You see a you that you recognize. This you turns to look at you. You do not know how long it takes you to reach you. But once you are standing close to you, you feel something inside you, inside both yous. Confirmation, affection. You were once called Scud. The other you was once called Jean. Inside the dead womb of Jean you is a ball of blood and meat, heavier than the blood and meat in your stomach. It is yet another you. If this little Scud Jean you were strong enough, it would rip through Jean you's muscle and skin to get out. You feel something like longing. You both stagger. Your hands touch. This is by accident, unless it is not by accident. Scud you has broken fingers, and one jabs through a hole in Jean you's palm. Your hands are fastened. You do not try to detach them. Scud you notices a hard, hot ring on one of Jean you's fingers, and Scud you feels a nice lightness. You walk together, side by side, for no reason at all. You believe you used to do this. It is not an easy walk. Giant works of machinery create barriers. Fire is everywhere, and fire is a fast-moving thing. But time has no meaning. You are in no hurry. Scud you and Jean you reach the edge of the world. Metal posts prevent you from walking farther. Beyond is a sky of smoke and water, aglow with the flaming ruins of other floating machines. You sense more yous out there. You have an inkling of the scale of things. If you can stretch out across water, you might also stretch across land. There is no telling how far you will go. The firelight behind you competes with the aurora of a dying day. You hold hands and picture an overripe world. You turn back to the fast-moving ones. You walk. Both of you do. All of you do. You hunt. You bite. Some of you burn. More of you are born. All happens just as it should. Death by death, the world becomes less of me and more of you. That's it. That's from The Living Dead by me and George Romero, out August 4th. Thanks.
And that is Tuesday Funk for July. Thanks again to all our readers, Lily B., Rosamund Lannon, Stuart Ross, Mickey Kendall, and Daniel Kraus.
Thanks also to all of you for joining us tonight. And just as a reminder, you can donate if you'd like to throw some money to tonight's readers. You can do that by Venmoing at Me3dia. There are links down below in the comments or also in the chat. And have a great night, and hope to see you again on August 4th. Thanks.